Welcome. If you are new to Twin Essence, we are Starseed Lightworkers and Collective Ascension Guides. I am Marley, I am a Syrian Starseed, and I'm Lacey, the Lyran Starseed of Twin Essence. So part of our mission as Collective Ascension Guides involves how we share messages for the collective and pave that ascension path for the collective. And there are so many things happening right now in the world. There's a lot of destruction or discourse, a lot of chaos for some, and if you are sensitive and awakened starseed, it can be really hard to discern and figure out what is true, what is actually happening right now. And we are here to help clear that static and help you make sense. We serve as neutral channels, simply sharing the information that our star families share with us so that we understand where to put our energy and you can understand what the truth is and where to put your energy in return. So as we tap in, I know that I've talked about this a little bit on Instagram or social media this week, but I think it's important to set the stage and share it again, that as much as there are conspiracies and speculation and predictions being made out there from different spiritually awakened individuals about, is the U.S. going to go to war? What other things are going to be uncovered that are awful happening right now? What more pain and suffering can we take? The information that Lacey and I receive as channels, it comes from a place with no fear. We are completely unafraid of the path ahead, especially as this eclipse hit this week and the initiation point is now occurring. So there's going to be there's multiple events happening over the next how many months, but we are completely unafraid of the path ahead with the information that we receive. It's just matter of fact, it's neutral, it's truth, and we know that this is occurring for a reason. The pain, the destruction, the suffering, all of that has to occur in order for us to move as a whole, as a collective, forward into the next phase of our awakening level. Just like you experienced your own growth edges, your own challenges, traumas to help you awaken and move further on your path, that is what the collective is now being asked to do. Yes, there's so much. I feel like we have so much to cover and there's so much going on, but just tapping into it, and I want to start with a couple of headline topics. So just sifting through the headlines the last several years, and we saw so many big collective events, whether people were aware of it or not, that were occurring. And I want to dig into some of the darker topics that have been coming up and that have been causing a lot of disrupt and distress and distortion in the field and the frequency for the collective. It's like the shadow side of the collective. Yes, because really, it's exactly what I said, right? Everything that's occurring, we see it happen on an individual level, right? Everybody's going through these things individually on their own individual path, but now can you zoom out and see it from a collective level? So what Lacey's referring to now, that's the shadow work side of the collective. Yeah. And digging into some of that, I've talked about this a little bit online, but I just want to bring forward this message because it's really timely and important for you to hear. And it goes along with the bigger, more recent current event, which was the release of the Epstein files. But if we actually go back in time, and I don't have a actual current events calendar in front of me, so I can't tell you how many years back it was, but we've actually seen a lot of bigger collective events that go along the same thread and theme as the Epstein files have. And if you have followed anything in the media from R. Kelly and the fall of him and the exposing of all of the dark and negative things that he was involved in and what he was doing and the harm and abuse, if you follow the Harvey Weinstein case and all of the dark things that were going on there, if you follow the P. Diddy case, all of the dark things and the proof of and the evidence of these dark things that were occurring that came to light. And then we have the most recent one, which was the biggest one of all, which was the release of the Epstein files, just exposing all of these people that were a part of something that seemed to be buried and seemed to be kept in the dark, but actually really wasn't when you look back on it. It's really not a new topic. It's really not something new. It's something that there's always been an undercurrent and rumbling of that, the collective, right? So it's really not new information. And I think too, like, as Lacey's bringing up these different examples that we've seen in recent how many years, on this shadow side, or uncovering, so to speak, the uncovering of these events occurring, it has caused, like, as we've seen different outcomes from these events, it's caused different groups of people to activate, right? Like, different groups of people, it causes this activation in them to see something, feel a certain way about it, feel that it's wrong, maybe. And it's caused us to look differently at certain structures and systems, right? Because now we're looking at, the music industry or the entertainment industry. Now we're looking at the justice system. Where is that failing us, right? So it's like these 3D structures, and where are we finding that they're not doing what they could be doing or should be doing? Well, it's different waves of awakening that we've gone through. And way back when R. Kelly happened, there was a wave of collective awakening, if you will, and a reckoning. Then there was the Harvey Weinstein wave, and there's the P. Diddy wave. Now there's the Epstein Files wave. I would say that the most recent one is probably the biggest collective awakening that has occurred and opened the biggest group of people to opening their eyes than the other events. But the big thing with this is it's not a competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not a competition what wave woke you up and what you were aware to. And it kind of came through in a conversation that I was having with an individual, and I was asking them about, like, oh, did you follow P. Diddy? Did you follow R. Kelly? And they were like, I don't know anything about that. And it hit me with this download of, wow, there are these different ways of awakening, and it doesn't mean, if someone woke up years ago from an event, doesn't mean they're better or farther along than someone who's just waking up now. It just means that you have more experience. You're not going to be as new to the collective awakening. You're not going to be as shaken up by it because you've already had a version of that. You've already had your eyes open. And we're moving through a time where you're really being asked to take the rose-colored glasses off and see things for what they really are. And no longer is it going to be tolerated to stay asleep and ignorant of what is going on. It is time to be aware and awake. And there is no going back. There's no going back to sleep once you're aware and awake. You can't just forget what you know and pretend like everything's fine. That's not how it's going to work. Yes, and even when you talk about, like, somebody awakening years ago versus somebody awakening now, this is just simply part of that collective ascension process. It would be nearly impossible on a 3D level to have everyone awaken all at once. It would be overwhelming. It would be, I think, we would have returned to source already by now, right? We would, like, it would have been endgame by now. And so it's just simply how this process works, in that everybody's, there's not one path. We talk about that all the time. And so everybody's on their own unique path, and everybody is serving their own individualized mission as well. And so it's going to take everybody time to awaken and get to speed with where the collective is at, right? So right now we see this next wave occurring of collective awakening as it relates to the Ascension path and New Earth. Yes, I can say, with the files being released, I can say all of the leaders out there, whether they're spiritual or not, that have been saying things like, oh, this is a conspiracy theory, or I told you so, or I was right all along and no one believed me. Like, that's a really good way to discern someone who has outsourced their power to something bigger than themselves. To the external. And the whole point of this collective awakening process is to connect you to your power, whether you realize it or not. So if you're sitting there saying, I told you so, or no one believed me when I brought this up years ago, it's not about being right. It's not about depending on external evidence of whether people believed you or not. It's really more about whether you trusted yourself to stand on your power and say it when people were opposing what you were saying. And these people obviously outsource themselves and were really in their ego when they're saying that, because it's not helpful for the collective to just say, I told you so. It's also not about accountability either. So we're not sitting here trying to be, on a high horse or righteous, holding people accountable. That's really not anybody's job at this point. Like, everybody is serving their own individual piece to the collective puzzle. And the individuals that we do see happening, whether it's a position of power, a position of leadership, somebody who is famous or mainstream that we see being exposed right now, that is simply their role that they are playing in the collective right now. whether they are conscious of it or not, it's still playing out. And it's not necessarily helpful to approach it from a view of, how can I hold someone accountable? It's not really our job to hold them accountable. It's happening this way for a reason, because it's likely causing a next wave of awakening to occur. It's likely causing us to examine a different structure that maybe doesn't work quite right in a 3D environment anymore. It's a whole ripple effect occurring, but they have an important role in the group that they are playing. And we have to relieve ourselves of the accountability. It doesn't mean that you can't have an opinion and feel a certain way about an opinion and speak it, but relieve yourself of the burden and let it divinely unfold as it should, because we're all in this divine path, and we're all unfolding. Our path is unfolding as we're creating it, and as it should be for the collective and the individual path. Yeah, I'm glad we're bringing up the accountability piece, because it's really coming through strong. And just as a way to preface this is by no means meant to absolve someone of whatever they've committed or done. And it's also by no means meant to take away from anybody who was abused, victim to whatever occurred at the expense of these individuals that are involved in this bigger grand vision. But it is meant to help you zoom out and look at things from a bigger picture, because it's like you said, Marley, there's a role that these people are playing, and had these individuals not done the horrible things that they have done, you wouldn't be seeing the collective awakening that's occurring right now, like on a large scale. Like, it's like mass awakening, mass ascension. Yes, and it's exactly that. It's not about absolution, right? Like, nobody's being absolved of this, but it is moving us forward. And it's helping us zoom out to see how these places are being, how these puzzles are being, if I can even say it correctly, how these different pieces fit into the bigger picture. And really looking at what you said about there's no absolution in this. Like, if you're triggered hearing that because you're really angry and mad about what's coming out, like, good. You should be angry and mad. That's part of collective awakening. But I do want to point out that being aware and awake means accountability is taken care of, and it means you don't need to play God. I also just want to add too that, this is what Ascension is actually about. When you zoom out and you, instead of pointing the finger, blaming, and being intolerant, it's about zooming out and moving to a place of understanding, acceptance, and integration. Tolerance, yeah. Tolerance and integration. Like, that is Ascension. So that's why we talk so much about zooming out on it. It doesn't mean that we agree with things that are occurring. It doesn't mean that we think it's okay, right? We don't think these things are okay by any means, but we recognize that in the greater scheme of the incarnations we are in, everybody's serving a role. And when we can zoom out and see those different roles playing out, we move to a point of understanding, acceptance, tolerance, and ultimately integration for Ascension. So how can you zoom out to see that? The other thing is, do you think it's easy to play the role of what these individuals are playing in the public eye? Like, it's not an easy role to play. It's not an easy incarnation to have. And because of the way it's going to activate people and trigger them and cause, like, I don't want to call it panic, but cause like a lot of really strong emotions. It's going to emote really, really strong feelings out of people, as it's designed to do. Like, that's the very purpose of what it's designed to do. There's another piece here. There's one thread I'm trying to yeah, I was like, just wait. It's something, you said something earlier. I feel like there's something more there. Yeah, it's to do with there was another piece I was going to say about being aware and awake. Yes, the awareness and awake. Oh, okay. So with these mass collective awakenings that are happening, and the reckoning, and all of the people that are being awakened from these different events, like I mentioned 4 of them. The other thing with this is that this dark all really needs to come to light to be purged. So where Earth is going, there isn't room for all of these underground, like, secret hidden things that have been going on that are very, very dark. There isn't room to keep hiding and keep people asleep to what's actually the undercurrent of, I want to say like the undercurrent of Hollywood, because it's like more of like that like public image, but it's not just Hollywood, right? It's like public leaders. But there isn't room for this darkness to continue to go on as it has, because where Earth is going, all of that darkness needs to be purged, because it's not going to, when you look at it from an energetic standpoint and a frequency standpoint, like the frequency of all that dark stuff and the frequency of where we're going, like it can't exist at that level. So it has to be brought to light to not only awaken people, but to purge it.
And it's
so
an awareness piece too. Like the hidden shadows, we need awareness around it in order to truly balance. Like I think about the image coming to mind is like the yin and yang, like good and bad, positive, negative. Like integration is the middle of those. But if there's a bunch of shadows being hidden, how can we truly create a balance? So it's like, yes, it's a frequency thing, right? It's a part of it's a frequency piece to Ascension, but it's also about opening our awareness to it so that we can actually create acceptance, tolerance, and integration. And we would not be where we are as a society had these people not played this role and had this level of darkness or spectrum of polarity done what it had done. You know, Marley and I talk a ton about the spectrum of polarity all the time, but it did serve a purpose for this dark stuff and this negative stuff to happen, because it was an undercurrent, and from points of pain or discomfort, humanity is pushed to grow and always asked to move forward and grow from it and learn from it. And so that is exactly what is happening now. Are you ready to grow and move up to here and leave all this stuff behind, or do you want to keep staying in a consciousness of victimization and fear? Mm-hmm. And even like when you say leave all of it behind, I think it's really just a recognition and awareness. Again, it's like you acknowledge it, you understand it, you're aware of it. It's not to mean it shouldn't come from a place of judgment, is what I'm trying to say. Like what is good or bad, what is positive or negative, ultimately none of that matters. It's really about, again, understanding, can we reach that middle point for integration? And I think this kind of brings us to one of the the main reason why we felt the call and the push to set up the call today, because a huge event occurred in the US this week. And it seems very, very small, I think, in the grand scheme of things. Just a statement from the US president to call and order releasing of classified, essentially declassifying files, right, related to UFOs, UAPs, alien, quote unquote, life, non-human biological species, or it's some kind of term like that they use to a fancy scientific term for star beings.
I was gonna say we almost called this episode Files, Files, and More Files.
Yeah.
Because it feels like everything in the headlines right now is all about files.
But what marks, this initiation point with the eclipse and where we're going as a collective, what seems like a very small statement from a president to say that is actually quite large, because it is yet another point of mass ascension or collective ascension and mass awakening. Because there are groups of people that do confide and trust in the leaders. And so when a leader says, this is what I think, this is what I believe, or I don't know, and this is what I want done about it, that moves a whole nother group towards awakening and towards ascension that wasn't even consciously available to them before. They didn't even consciously understand their multidimensionality before.
Totally. It reminds me of when, like, years ago, when like a big celebrity would admit to working with a psychic medium, and that was really taboo at the time.
Yes.
Now we're actually seeing like government leaders say, oh, UFOs, UAPs, life, extraterrestrial life outside of Earth is in existence, whether you want to believe it or not. And there are some who have said, like, I don't know if it exists. But even just the mere concept of acceptance and acknowledgement of the big, large group of the population that does believe in this is
the potential.
Huge. It's the possibility, the opportunity, the potential that this is being acknowledged. And all of this, like, even you listening, it's like, yeah, obviously there's enough evidence out there. Like, we know this exists. It's like,
the existence of ghosts. It's like, yeah, this has been proven before. Honestly, if you're still in the category of I don't believe ghosts exist, like, I don't know if I can help you.
Like the early days of paranormal TV was always like, do they exist?
Yes.
Are they intelligent?
And it's like, okay, we're moved beyond that. Like, we know they exist, but now it's how can we further understand their existence? Because how can we further connect to other dimensions, other realms that they maybe exist within, and communicate with them, right?
We also see that with alien life. Again, I hate using the term alien, you know that, but we see that with extraterrestrial life forms where there's paranormal TV shows trying to prove the existence of them. Like, we know it exists. We don't need to prove it. It's just a matter of people understanding how to connect to it and how to communicate with it. And it's so much closer than you actually realize. So the release of these files is absolutely huge. It's really moving the needle forward for disclosure and for Earth's ascension, whether people agree with it or not.
And it'll be interesting to see what the collective reaction is as these different pieces are going to start getting released. But right now, this call to action is really important for the collective to view a different side of dimensionality than some groups haven't even acknowledged before.
You know, I believe it was back in 2022 when the first congressional hearing, I might be using the wrong language because I'm not fact checking this, but I think it was 2022 when the US government had their first hearing where they actually talked more about UFOs. That's when they I feel like that's when they sort of debuted the term UAP, but I think UAP has been around longer. It just was more new to me because it was in the public mainstream when I first was consuming it. That was also pre Starseed Awakening, so I was like, wow, this is huge. People are talking about it, and it's like, look where we are now. We have the leader of a country that's like, hey, there's a lot of people that believe in this. I think it's time we work on moving this forward, and we stop keeping it so secret. You have Obama going on a podcast saying the universe is very vast and large. Why wouldn't this exist? I didn't come into contact with it, nor do I know a ton, but this exists. It's so important, and it really should not be overlooked because this is really going to move the needle forward for individuals connecting to their multidimensionality and for purging the fear that people have towards UFOs and aliens, quote.
I think too, it speaks to the role everybody plays too on a collective level, because when we have the US president, who we do know is in quite a destructive role, right? Causing a lot of different things to be destroyed or be looked at differently, however you view that. And yet again, we see one other barrier being destroyed here, though. This is a barrier being destroyed. Let's start releasing files. Let's start creating more transparency around this topic. For the government to want to lead that charge, that just speaks to the destruction occurring too. As much as we can think there's a lot of negative pieces or bad pieces to the destruction, ultimately it's serving a larger purpose. And this is one example of, I think, where it can be very positive, right? Breaking down a transparency, or not breaking it down, creating more transparency.
Yes. You know, with these files, we'll have to see what comes with the push to release them and what comes out with it. Obviously, setting the stage for 2026, there's going to be a lot of information and things coming to the public, good, bad, whatever you want to label it. But I think I want to get into this topic of distraction.
Yes.
Because this is a big topic that our star families wanted us to bring forward for today's call. Is we are seeing a ton of New Earth and spiritual leaders say things about distractions and let's not get distracted from what's really going on here. And it's really, really important that we understand what distraction is and the perception of distraction, because it's really merely an oversimplification of what's really unfolding on Earth. Because saying that they're going to release declassify files on UFOs and UAPs and extraterrestrial life is not meant to take away from the darkness that's being purged with the Epstein files and other things going on. One truth doesn't outweigh the other. One truth is not more important than the other. Just like one trauma can't be compared or made worse than another trauma. It's this comparison trap. I think the distraction so many people saying this is just a distraction. You know, the US president put this out as a distraction from the Epstein files. Well, if you perceive it that way, but ultimately, why is one truth
any more important than another truth. We already know about the Epstein files. We know that's a truth that's out there, that's being uncovered, and it's unfolding more and more. But we already know that. That doesn't mean that another truth can't come forward as well. Can you hold multiple truths at the same time? I know Lacey and I can, but when you say it's a distraction, I think that you're outsourcing your ability to acknowledge and hold all truths.
I think that was perfectly put, because it is, the big thing with distraction and how they're saying it is distract who?
The perception.
It's a perception, because once you are aware and awake,
you can't go back.
You can't go back. So distract who? Like, no one is it's not look over here while we pretend this isn't happening. No one's doing that. Even if the intent of the person who made the decision to declassify files wanted that to happen, you literally aren't going to go back asleep.
You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like, you know about it, therefore it exists. So what is one more truth on top of another truth being shared right now?
And it's okay to be activated and want focus to be on justice for victims. It's okay to have that feeling, but that doesn't mean that declassifying files is a negative thing and that that's a bad thing, because they're both needed for Earth's ascension right now.
Yes. And ascension is not mutually exclusive, right? Like, disclosure's not mutually exclusive. We can be both. We can be and. We don't have to be or. That's how it's coming through. It's how do we hold all of this and acknowledge all of this? And to Lacey's point too, talking about like, look over here while I'm doing this over here. We do know that there are people in power that they do utilize strategy, and a strategy could be to distract or to try to control a narrative. But I think sometimes we're outsourcing it and giving too much credit to those who are in power and making it seem like there's this conscious thought process behind it. And sometimes there is a conscious thought process behind it. But in the case of the US president declassifying these files this week, it was done as a clapback of jealousy and an emotional reaction to Obama already acknowledging this. So it's like, do you really think this man was strategizing when he did this? Or do you think he was just emotionally reacting? Because from what I have seen, I'm pretty sure this is an example of where an emotional reaction is divinely planned and timed.
But it's really perfect how it happened, because you have a messenger over here that's going to reach their audience, and then you have a messenger over here that's going to reach their audience.
Yes.
And they're
maximizing, it's optimizing reach.
They're different audiences that they're reaching with these messages. So it's really, really important with how it's being done. And the other piece I want to bring through on this distraction thing, because you heard me talk about ego and different messengers, and you heard us talk about the individuals that are talking about distraction, and they're trying to call your attention to only focusing on love and light and don't be distracted.
It's a lot of finger pointing.
Yes, but it's really, I want to bring another point through on how this is actually about their mission and purpose too.
Yes.
Like, and you kind of alluded to this, Marley, because you said like, oh, do you really think the people in power are doing everything with a consciousness? And there is some consciousness to it, but we have different missions and purposes playing out on Earth, right? You have the spiritual leaders that are wanting to say a certain thing and focus on the distraction piece, and they have their mission and purpose. You have the individuals in power who you might be giving more credit than is necessary, because let's be real, all the individuals in power serving in different roles, in 3D roles, I want to make that point clear, that doesn't mean they're connected to their mission and purpose in their incarnation. It's likely something very unconscious to them that's occurring. So that's when I talk about like the strategy and the consciousness behind like making decisions. I'm not saying they never have consciousness or strategy behind decisions, but there are times where it's like, I think too much credit is being given and finger pointing and blaming, when really they might not even, it might be that they're not even consciously aware of what they're doing. And they might not ever be. Like the design of their incarnation might be that they can't be consciously aware of their mission. And because if they did become consciously aware of it, they might try to stop it. It might go wrong, right? They might completely have to exit their body then and exit the incarnation and stop. So I just think, again, it's like, how can you continue to zoom out to see the greater picture here, to move to that point of understanding, acceptance, and integration? Like, that is ascension. And it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. How can you hold all truths
instead of outsourcing and pointing and saying, they're doing this because of this, and they're distracting from this. Because in my incarnation, I acknowledge all the truths and I hold all the truths. It doesn't matter.
And I think that's just what you said, right? The assumption that everyone in a 3D leadership public role is aware and connected to their mission and purpose isn't accurate, because there are some people who aren't supposed to be connected to it. I do think with the collective awakening happening right now, it's more important now than ever for people to understand their mission and purpose, right?
Yes.
To understand their role, understand what they're actually here to do, and understand the vehicle to bring forward that mission. That is more important now than it ever was in the past, because we are going through a collective awakening, and there are a whole lot of people who are taking off the rose-colored glasses and saying, oh, I guess the world wasn't really what I thought it was. What am I doing here, and what is my role? What am I contributing to this collective process?
Yes, because as that collective group, as we move forward to that next level, that next frequency, and as more are awakening, they're going to become more aware of that mission and purpose, and understand the importance of it, and they're going to want to explore that. Did you have one other piece on that?
I was going to say there's like a shit ton of starseeds that are starting to wake up and actually look at the bigger picture of why am I here and what am I meant to do here. And it's really, really important that they release any fear, guilt, and shame associated with how long they were asleep.
Yes.
Because you can't help when you wake up. You wake up in divine timing. And it doesn't make you better if you woke up sooner. It doesn't make you better if you woke up later. It's kind of what I said in the beginning, but it's just about how we create systems of support within our own communities and spaces to help people navigate this process.
You know, it also kind of relates to, there's one other topic that will kind of pivot here, but I just want to mention too, like that this isn't linear, right? Like Ascension isn't even linear. Like it's just different frequencies that people are at. It doesn't have to be in this hierarchy, right? Like it's not linear, and it's much more complex than input to output. It's not cause and effect, right? It's how are we causing the effect? Like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about that all the time. Like you go from cause and effect in that Newtonian model to causing an effect. And so when we see people awakening, it's about understanding the multidimensionality and understanding how to work with that for co-creation and for their mission and purpose, and how they want to carry that forward in this lifetime. And then when we see groups of people getting stuck in the shadow and the outsourcing to the external and the pointing of fingers, you know, that is really that old Newtonian model of cause and effect and linear thought processes, very 3D, instead of zooming out and seeing the whole picture from a higher dimensional perspective, a higher state of consciousness, and seeing, yes, that's the purpose behind that. That's the purpose behind this. And I know the truth, and I know where I stand in this greater picture.
Yes, I think that linear 3D thought process is really, really important to look at and to understand who the key players are and what their role is compared to your role. There's one other piece here I was going to bring up. Okay. It's a little bit around accountability, but it's also around the different feelings and emotions that are being I should say, that are being brought out in individuals in the collective right now. And I talked about like the fear and the shame and the guilt of being asleep, and how there are people experiencing that. There are people experiencing a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of grief. There are people that just desperately want justice. And I think that's really, really important, and it holds its role in society. But I think the belief system that it's going back to the Epstein files a little bit here, but the belief system that these files released a bunch of names and that they're all guilty, and that this reckoning needs to occur where they're all held accountable for what they did, isn't necessarily going to solve things. It's really 3D and linear to think that cause and effect, like you were saying, Marley, with 3D timelines.
Input to output.
And there's a lot of people that with this collective awakening are falling back into actual 3D programming and 3D thought processes, which is
which is not bad, but it's like they're not at the level of like the huge awakening of moving beyond the Matrix belief system.
I mean, it only supports you to a certain extent.
Yes, because this concept of I'm going to see them held accountable in the public eye and get put in jail. Let's just say like we're going to put somebody in jail for something bad they did. Do you feel better now? Is everything right in the world? Is it going to prevent it from happening again? Like there's bigger questions that need to be asked to hold people accountable that starts way at the top and way back when. And I think focusing on the right now of holding all these people accountable is like asking the wrong questions.
Yeah, and it's also like, like to your point, is it going to happen again? We're not saying like there's one right answer to it, but these events are occurring there's multiple ripples being made from these events. And maybe it is like that we can examine a structure, a system, a process and say that's not working. That's not going to work. That's not the way to do it. Right? So I think recognizing like the mass awakening that comes with these events, but also identifying the weak points or the pain points in our 3D system or structure that isn't going to support where we're moving as a collective.
And the really, really strong message is you don't fix problems in the Matrix by existing within the Matrix.
Yes. We have to think outside of it. And that's where that awakening comes in and understanding your multidimensionality. It's existing only at the one level likely isn't going to change anything. So we have to move outside of that with our ascension process.
Yeah. It is really, really interesting when you're like, oh my gosh, we need to move out. We need to remove yourself from the Matrix so you can see it for what it is instead of being, you're outsourcing your power when you're falling victim to the system of cause and effect Newtonian model.
Yes.
So it's just making sure that's very, very clear.
And it goes back to that mutually exclusive piece. Like we exist in the 3D, but we also exist in other dimensions as well. So we can be both. We can be all.
They keep saying to me, like, do you feel better now? Like if that happened, it's kind of like, do you feel better with people being held accountable, or is that just you outsourcing your power to what you think the system and structure is supposed to be?
Or would you feel better if it never happened again, right? But the other piece they're bringing through is controlled disclosure. So there's different messages out there right now. There are different messengers talking about controlled disclosure from the perspective of those who are disclosing things are the ones behind it as well. And it's more of blaming and finger pointing again to those in power. And really, it has, when Lacey and I talk about controlled disclosure, it's really about these waves of awakening and the waves of awareness happening. Because if it happened all at once, we would have integrated and we'd be gone, right? I said that in the beginning. We would have integrated, we would have gone back to source already.
None of us would be here.
And in reality, when we know that we have groups of people who aren't aware of their multidimensionality still, if we just exploded everything out there, if everything was exploded out there all at once to humans on Earth, it's like it wouldn't even be effective to what we're doing as a group in this ascension process. It would either cause people to retract more into fear, and then the other group would be pushed further probably towards awakening, and it would create more duality and more of a divide versus how things are divinely unfolding right now in these waves in which the movement to New Earth occurs.
Yes, I think this controlled disclosure concept comes from it comes from those that are holding this belief that negative polarity beings are in control of everything happening and that
they're causing harm to Earth
and that they're choosing to release things when they want to. And I think that belief system is flawed because I think that belief system would mean that you believe these negative beings are in control of Earth's ascension. And we are all sovereign in our energy and have autonomy to do what we want with our energy. Yes, it's a very Matrix 3D trait to outsource to leaders, right? And follow one way of being. But this concept that
these negative polarity beings are in control of Earth and that they are choosing and controlling disclosure really dilutes Earth's ascension to one group that's in charge of everything, and that's just not our experience. And it's a dualistic thought process. Like in thinking that, you're not accessing your multidimensionality at all. You're putting us back into duality, back into it's me or them, it's us versus them, and that is not conducive to ascension. That's not tolerance, acceptance, balance, understanding, that integration. That's not that. And you're moving further into duality and intolerance, saying we're wrong. That is not ascension. That's the opposite of ascension. It's us versus them mentality. Yes. And so Lacey and I get so riled up about this and saying that there's negative beings controlling Earth. I'm like, this concept of positive and negative on the polarity spectrum is subjective. Like, who am I to say that a negative polarity is better or less important than a positive polarity? What I know is I'm trying to find the balance. I'm trying to find that integration point. And so if I were to sit there and point my finger at a negative polarity and say, you're doing this to cause harm to Earth, I'm going back into the linear 3D structure, right? I'm going back into a 3D thought process, and I'm outsourcing instead of recognizing the greater role we're all playing as a group and what's occurring. And that's just it. Like, we're all playing a role, and one isn't better than the other. If we didn't experience any kind of conflict or, I want to say, like, pain and discomfort on Earth, would our souls be growing and evolving? Would souls still be incarnating on Earth? These are just food for thought questions. It's very yin and yang is how it's coming up. Yes, and this is how it's coming through to us. It's what we're receiving now. Doesn't mean information couldn't come forward for it to change in the future, but we have not experienced in our even channeling now, like, I have not experienced anything that has been close to the fact that there are these beings controlling Earth. And if that's the case, then, like, why are there people out here speaking the truth right now? Yeah. Like, if that's the case, then why would we be here? Like, and it goes back to that concept again of, like, even if somebody is in a position of power in their incarnation right now and they are a negative polarity, they might not even be consciously aware of their mission and what they're doing, because they can't be. If they were aware, they would maybe try to stop it or deviate, and it wouldn't play out the way it's supposed to. And then, the other questions, they bring up more prompting questions of like what is light without dark? What is good without bad? What is positive without negative? Like, you need it. Like, you need this. There's a wholeness to this, I think. And that's really what Ascension is. It's a wholeness to this. And reducing it down to there being a negative beings wanting to cause harm. Like, negative polarities don't move from a place of wanting to cause harm. They move from a place of self, of I, of me. And so they're not taking actions because they're actively thinking, I want to hurt this human. They take actions because they're thinking of themselves and what they're going to get by taking that action. So I just think it's an oversimplification of a negative polarity to say that they want to cause harm to Earth. Like, no, they're just a negative polarity, and who are you to say that they're any better or worse than you if you're a positive polarity? Again, moving from intolerance to a place of understanding. If you can't hold both, then you're really skewed in how you're serving. And I think that it's sometimes doing more harm to put that message out about controlled disclosure and the beings that are controlling things, because it's causing more fear in the collective, and it's causing more victimization and detachment from what is going on. And the thing is, when you are aware and awake, you're supposed to be connected to your power. You're not a victim in what's unfolding right now. Like, whoever is sitting here feeling helpless and victimized by, like, you're not a victim and you're not powerless. In fact, waking up is meant to connect you to your power. So I think being mindful of how you're consuming messaging and these beliefs that all these negative entities are controlling everything and that they're even controlling disclosure, that really oversimplifies things down. It's really playing the blame game, like you said, and it really is detaching you from your own power and truth and causing more fear about like who's in charge. Because you're in charge. We're all in charge.
And they are challenging the Starseed's listening. So as a Starseed listening right now, they are challenging you to zoom out and to look at it from a different perspective. And it's okay to move through the human emotion of this. This process, we're going to see a lot unfolding in the months to come, the time ahead of us, the path ahead. And it's okay to feel emotions and allow yourself to feel the emotions behind it. But eventually, at some point on your ascension path, you have to transcend the emotion to move to the next level. And so Lacey and I have moved beyond that initial phase. I mean, we exist in the 3D and enter the matrix every day. We understand it on a much deeper level than most people understand it, doing the work that we do as Starseed Lightworkers and existing daily in a 3D governmental structure and processes. But after that initial human emotional reaction we had to what's going on, we were able to transcend that and move forward into a greater place of understanding and zoom out with a different perspective. So that's really what they're bringing forward for the Starseeds listening is how can you zoom out, transcend the emotion to see things from the larger perspective and understand what's occurring. We can hold all truth. We don't have to stop at just one.
And the last bit here I will give is just a technique that Marley and I use on our ascension path to help you with that. And it has to do with when experiencing duality. And if you can approach things from a place of curiosity rather than pointing the finger or blaming someone or having a really, really emotional reaction, I mean, yes, you need to work through your emotions. But if you can approach something from a place of curiosity and just ask questions, see what you receive, see what comes forward from the universe, and see if you can actually change your perspective of what you're witnessing and what you're observing. I can't tell you how important it is to be in a place of observation on your ascension path. It is one of the skills that Marley and I really honed in on during our own ascension. And when you can observe things without just immediately reacting, you get to choose how you react and you can actually understand in a much bigger concept and way, like why something's unfolding the way it's unfolding. And whether you like it or not, we need both of these dualistic experiences happening right now.
And that is where true embodiment of your multidimensionality comes in too. Because you are existing simultaneously in all dimensions at once. And so it's an embodiment piece that when you can capture it, it's the best feeling, I think, in the world to be able to capture that. So, if you have questions for us, feel free to put them in the chat or comment. Take what resonates with you, but this is what they bring us. These are the truths that are occurring right now and unfolding for the collective path ahead. If you are interested in working with us, we do offer twin magic readings. These are for your individual ascension paths, where we look at connecting you to your cosmic origins, understanding your mission and purpose in this incarnation, and understanding where you can create more alignment on your personal ascension path.
And we also offer different mentorship packages depending on the level of support you desire with your Starseed Awakening and Ascension journey. Other than that, you can connect with us right here on YouTube with Starseed Disclosure Discussions, where we pop on, we go live, we share our channeled messages on what's unfolding for disclosure. You can listen and watch the Ascension Path with Twin Essence right here on YouTube or on Spotify and Apple. You can listen. And with that, we will say goodbye, I guess. We don't have any questions.
Yeah, sign off until the next disclosure discussion. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you want to be notified of the next discussion.
Actually, before we go, I do want to mention Between Dimensions as well. Between Dimensions with Twin Essence is also a YouTube show that is premiering where we bring on different New Earth leaders, mystics, guides, and guests to have very authentic, fun, and expansive conversations. It's really, really important now more than ever that we connect to our multidimensionality and understand the different levels of support that are out there and can support you on your journey.
Absolutely. So like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you.